Hey guys, we are excited to be back with season two, now on video, which honestly we're pretty terrified about because we don't know how to do video. This season is a little different. We're talking to all sorts of people from all sorts of different backgrounds about big changes in their lives, big pivotal moments, big turning points, what brought about those changes, why did they decide to do that, and the kind of the consequences of change. We're starting this season off with Nikki, who also happens to be our lovely producer. Nikki has an incredible story of pushing through some unexpected events in her life and talking about where she's at now on the other side of those things. Just a fair warning, there are some conversations about abuse and some other heavy topics that might be disturbing for some people, but we did feel it's important to capture those things as part of Nikki's story. OBOGs, we are excited to have you back with us. We just want to put a little more good out into the world, so thanks for hanging with us, and let's enjoy the episode. Oh, okay.
We're back.
I think it's officially happening.
It's finally happening.
Do you ever have a good plan and then once you hit record, everything falls through?
Yes, it's a lot like Mike Tyson's "Everybody's Got a Plan Until I Get Punched in the Mouth."
Look, Cody, pretend that all 500,000 of our viewers are watching. They've been patiently anticipating season 2 to drop, as the kids say, of the Other Brothers podcast, and they're watching right now.
Christmas came early. That's all I got to say is you're welcome, and Christmas came early for you this year. Congratulations.
Unless you look at it that Christmas was late, since we're in April, maybe we missed Christmas.
Maybe we're your Easter present.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm glad we still have editing tools.
Yep.
Well, welcome to the Other Brothers season 2 podcast.
Now on video, in color.
In color, live. Hold on, our technician's waving at us.
Oh, I'm just saying hi.
Oh, okay.
You're
Just
back.
saying hello. He gave us 2 thumbs down.
Yeah,
already.
That was hurtful.
Okay.
Oh, 2 thumbs up.
Well, Cody, a lot of time and effort and discussion and meditation and anxiety,
Pondering, prayer,
a lot of physical exertion was put into this season 2. So can you help the listener and viewer, since we're on video now?
Now on video.
Can you, I guess, talk a little bit about what season 2 is about?
So we are going to call season 2 pivotal. And I think part of pivotal is we may pivot our way as we get going here. But we really were looking at, the changes people have made in their lives and how they found the strength to make those changes, why they made those changes, and ultimately what came from, the decisions they've made. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm wanting to go with it. What are you wanting to get out of it?
Totally. Season
Jer
1.
Bear, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Cobra. Season 1 was an interesting experiment. I think what came out of that for us is we realized that we really enjoy talking to fascinating people. And we had a chance to talk to a couple fascinating people on season 1. We said, hey, let's keep that train rolling.
Yep. Heidi and Brent.
That's right.
I felt super bad last time I called him Brett. And immediately I was like, oh man, if he hears this, he's going to think the Cobra doesn't care about him. Brent, you're the man. I am so sorry I mispronounced your name.
We did get a cease and desist from him. So
well, I also got a restraining order. You only got a cease and desist.
Wait for season 3 for that story.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we kind of had to do a whole rebrand, re-engineering, and we realized, you and I were like, things are starting to click, but it feels like there's just one missing piece here.
One last missing piece to this perfect puzzle.
We really need a wrangler.
We do.
We need an adult babysitter, someone who's smarter than us, someone who's more talented than us, and who could really help us get season 2 off the ground. So I thought I had a brilliant idea. Yes.
It was genius. I mean, Rogan kind of turned us down.
Sure. Who cares about him? He's not going to do.
He was our second choice anyways.
No, I had the fortune to meet a really cool young lady, and she, I could just tell that she had like a lot to give. Like she has a really cool story. And that's with me not even like knowing her full story. I just know that she has a really cool story. She's come from a cool place. She's very assertive, which we needed because you and I are knuckleheads and don't get anything done. And I kind of pitched her this idea, and I said, hey, 0 salary, almost no benefits, but would you want to do something like this? When I kind of told her we told her the premise of the show for season 2, I think she was interested. And so somehow magically, she agreed to jump aboard on this vessel.
It wasn't because of our good looks. I know that.
No, she explicitly stated that in her acceptance letter
several times.
It has nothing to do with your looks.
Yeah.
So we're real excited to work with Nikki.
Nikki Ticky Tavi.
We're workshopping a nickname. I haven't completely bought into it. You have.
I think Nikki, we'll ask her. When we bring her on, we're going to ask Nikki how she feels about her nickname. Question 1. Right out of the gate.
All right. Well, good. So tonight on our very first season 2 podcast, we have our excellent, wonderful producer, Nikki Adamson, with us. And let's talk to her. You ready? Do we need to pad any more? Do we need to add any more to that?
Do we want to read her bio before we bring her on, or do we just want to get into it?
Yeah, read her bio, but read it like you're a salesperson on a commercial. Use your radio voice.
Okay. Nikki Adamson is a Texas transplant from Las Vegas, Nevada. She and husband Davey moved almost a year ago and own a direct sales company.
Okay, stop. I don't like any of this.
Yeah, I was about to say
way too mechanical.
Amberly hates that voice, and I love doing it just to piss her off.
Way too mechanical. Two thumbs down.
2 thumbs down.
No, okay. I think we should just bring Nikki on, and as a good producer she will put us back on track. So
yeah.
All right. What's Colin's nickname? He's kind of our technician tonight.
C-Man.
Colin's ballin'.
Okay, Colin Ballin. That's terrible. C-Man is also very bad. We'll just call you Colin. Colin, can you bring the Nikki Adamson on stage with us?
Yes, sir.
All right. And there she is.
Hey.
Nikki.
Hi, guys.
Oh, we can hear you loud and clear.
That's awesome.
Okay, so Nikki, as our producer, excuse me, you probably already have some critiques for us off the cuff.
Yeah, no semen. First of all,
seaman, I let's just drop that one. Well, how are you, Nikki?
I'm doing good.
Super cool of you to be our first guest, and I'm sure you have lots of other things you could be doing tonight with your time, but you decided to hang out with the other brothers.
She likes no free time. She said that.
Yeah.
That's true. She did mention that she'll typically accept any offer to do anything.
That's right.
So wait, does that mean that we could just be like the worst, like have nothing to offer her and she would just say yes anyways? Because that's
I think she'd have done it for a Klondike bar.
Okay, well, that's fair. Well, Nikki, we're going to do our best not to, read your bio word for word, but what I know from you, we happen to go to church together, right? All of us happen to go to church together, and you moved into our town, about a year and a half?
No, it's not even been a year yet. June.
Really?
June will be a year.
What?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
I know. Feels like you've known me forever.
So that's where we met, and then we've met your awesome husband. We've met not all of your kids, but we've met some of your kids. They're super cool, super cute. But you are a transplant. You moved from Nevada, is that right? Was it Vegas area? Excuse me, Nevada.
Thank you.
Is it
Everyone down here says Nevada, and it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
How do you say pecan pie?
Pecan pie.
Pecan?
Pecan.
All right.
Nikki,
whatever.
save us. We're already off topic.
Nevada.
It's Nevada. Yep, came from Las Vegas.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that's where you grew up, went to high school. Yes.
So didn't grow up there, but I went to school in that area. I was there for a very long time, it feels like, and it's where I met my husband. So my current husband.
Yeah. And we'll fast forward a little bit, but I'm assuming what brought you down here is you met your husband and you came down here for work opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So how do you like Texas?
I love it. It's so green and it rains. It's everything that Vegas is not.
How do you like the Texas summer? How is that compared to Vegas?
So we got here last June and they basically said, this is the hottest summer we've ever had. Like, I've heard that from multiple people. I'm like, oh, good. I'm glad that we came during the hottest ever moment. But it's not, it's just as hot as Vegas. Vegas is hot. It's 110, 115 regularly in the summer in Vegas. The difference is humidity. We don't have any humidity in Las Vegas. And so, yeah, that's an adjustment.
Yeah. I think I remember having that conversation with you, like, wow, well, you've come like right in the middle of the Texas heat. And you're like, yeah, I'm from Nevada. So I know what heat feels like.
Yeah.
So the time we were in Vegas, it was 117 when we were on top of like the Eiffel Tower. And honestly, I thought it was worse than Texas. I was like, I don't care if it's a dry heat or not. Like,
It's rough.
heat is heat. It was miserable.
Yeah.
Well, we love that you guys moved down here to our benefit. So we have your family here and got to know you.
We've been waiting on you. Thank you.
Oh, you are welcome.
What's your angle, I guess, your perception of how you became the producer of the Other Brothers podcast? How does that story work in your mind?
Well, you and I, Jared, had a conversation just about who I am and things like that. And in that, you were like, you should start a podcast. And then you're like, by the way, I have a podcast. And then that led to me being like, oh, well, I'm going to go listen to it. Right. So it did. And then I was like, let me tell you all of the things that you didn't ask to hear.
Which here's a ton of unsolicited advice.
Yes.
Which was,
we love it
I have a
though.
problem, you guys. That's what
no, it was completely on point. It always is.
Yep. We needed it.
Yeah. I just, after we talked, I was like, you got a great voice. You got, you're very outgoing.
Great energy.
Yeah. You should tell you. And I hope one day we have a Nikki Adamson podcast exclusive, just your own podcast. And we can just, we'll just be your tech guys or something. Right. But we love that you're here with us. Am I right that you kind of were intrigued by, I guess, when we were kind of kicking around, what we wanted this second season to be about? Is that something that kind of caught your interest?
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody has some kind of story to share, right? And the thing that the world right now is so separate and so focused on our differences. And really what we need to be thinking about is the things that make us the same. And so many people are in the same boat as you, as some other person, and being able to share your story, how you were able to overcome and how you're better on the other side is so special and motivating for other people to hear. And I think it's just an excellent idea. So I definitely wanted to be a part of it.
What do you think causes that separation, Nikki? Because I agree with you. So what do you think is kind of the root or the stem of that?
I don't know if you remember when I first moved here, I gave a talk about comparison. And I think comparing yourself to anyone else, right? Comparison is the death of joy.
Sure.
Like, we are always looking to someone else and what they have and what we don't have. And it's just so interesting to me. I think just because somebody has something that I don't doesn't mean what I have is any less important to me in my life. And I think that's the problem with social media. We're always seeing everyone's highlight reels, right? The things that are the best in their life. And so we're just over here thinking, well, my life doesn't have that going on. I didn't go to France this year. I didn't, something like that. I'm always.
Did you go to France this year?
No, gosh, I wish.
I'm super jealous.
No, but you've been to the Eiffel Tower. That's pretty.
I
The
know.
Vegas one.
pretty
That must
cool.
have been why I thought of France.
Yeah, there you go.
Also,
Yeah.
that one. Paris, Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think from our season 1 podcast, we talked a lot about that. More specifically to, season 1 was about church culture specifically, and we alluded to that everyone kind of feels like they have to kind of put on not a show, but put on a persona to represent themselves in a certain way. And what Cody and I really like is, what if we could kind of break down those barriers and show everybody that everyone really does have a story. Everyone has some cracks. Everyone has some history that was difficult for them. And, could society be better, I guess, if we became a little more comfortable knowing that even though someone looks like they, have it all figured out and their life is in place, and they travel to exotic places and they have great professions and whatever, all of us are dealing with something, and all of us have at least a story, some kind of turning point in our lives, or some kind of, why at the road where we took a left rather than a right. And I think we're just kind of fascinated by that. And Cody and I have, as we've become really good friends, we've talked about some things in our lives. And I think that's one of the, the things that, brought us together as closer friends, is we just kind of like yielded who we are, and we're just fascinated by it. So, and you mentioned that, you've had some circumstances or situations in your life that you could talk about, I think when we're like, yeah, everyone has a story, you're like, I got one or two myself, and it was perfect to, to book you as our first guest to talk about this stuff. So I think one of the things I struggle with is, where do we start? So I guess let's go back to Nevada. Is that fair? And you must have gone to, I'm assuming, school there, high school there.
Yeah. I grew up in a small town outside of Las Vegas. Actually, it was called Pahrump.
Pahrump?
And it was called Pahrump. I know.
What was the population?
I mean, the population now is probably like 50,000. When I was there, it was closer to the 30s, probably.
Okay.
But
just paint a picture for us,
It felt like a small town.
Okay.
It's smaller than our town. It felt like, and it was much more spread out. So yeah, it was a lot different. But there was like 300 kids in my graduating class.
Yeah. What number did you graduate? Where were you ranked?
Oh, I have no idea. Probably nowhere close to that.
By the way, for the YouTube people, I don't know why my face is purple, but in real life, it's not purple. I don't think, unless I'm just that embarrassed.
Are you winded?
I'm always winded. Okay. I'm old and out of shape.
Just because sometimes when I run out of wind, I get a little purple.
Yeah, Pahrump is the sound I make when I sit in my chair as I'm walking around.
That's the sound I make to get up.
Pahrump, and yeah. Well, so what was high school like for you? Like, there's always the social cliques in high school. Were you with the cool people? were you? Let's see, what were the cliques in high school, Cody?
Okay, so real quick,
the freaks.
Nikki, what year did you graduate?
Don't age her.
2003. It's fine.
Okay,
Rude.
no, because we graduated the same year, so now I can go back and let's see. There was definitely. So we had skaters. Did you have like the skater group?
Yeah, we had skaters. I was
the motocross group.
I dated some skaters.
Okay.
No.
The Cowboys?
Like
the rodeo group?
Not in them. I was not in that group.
What about the Goths?
Have you met me?
I'm just asking what groups there. I didn't know you
had
back
some
then.
Turning points in your life. Maybe that's where it started. You were with the Goths, and
did you have an emo phase?
No, never.
Okay, so what a stupid question. It's not even relevant to anything. I'm just more curious. Didn't you say that you danced or you were a cheerleader?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
yep.
So you were in the cool group.
So I spent my whole life, my whole high school life, school life, cheerleading, that was like my jam, dance. That's what I focused on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. And did you ever get to compete with that kind of stuff, like around the country or anything?
So I actually I got chosen as for cheerleading to go to the Down Under Bowl in Australia.
Very cool.
We went to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
Danced in, lots of different places. So it was fun. It kind of took you all over.
I've been to the Azel Christmas Parade a few times.
I've never been to that. I've watched the Macy's Day Parade on TV.
Not to, clout or whatever,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I don't want to brag, but
yeah,
kind of watch it every year.
okay, cool. So
That's cool you were there though.
Fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun. And then what I don't know, what was your family like? Is it traditional mom and dad? How many brothers and sisters did you have, or do you have?
Yeah.
What was family life like for you in
Yeah.
high school?
So all very interesting. So let me let me just go back a little bit.
Okay.
So I was living with my grandparents. I had moved in with my grandparents when I was in 4th grade. We ended up moving out to Pahrump. At that point, in 4th grade, I was in Las Vegas. My mom was in Arizona. I moved in with my grandparents. Then we all moved out to Pahrump. Eventually, my mother followed, but I was there for a while. Well, I experienced a lot of, trauma in my childhood and in that house. And so from that point, I ended up moving back in with my mom for a short period of time. But in between there, I lived with my aunts. I lived with friends of mine. Whenever my mom, I guess I was going into my junior year of high school, my mom told me that she was going to move to Las Vegas. And I hadn't lived with her for very long at that point. And I was like, well, I'm not going. And she was like, what? Yeah. I've spent my whole life. I lived out there from 5th grade, I think, until my junior year at that point. And I was happy. I felt like a big fish in a small pond. And I had my ways. And I was just like, no, I'm not going. And oddly enough, she was like, okay. So I found a friend to go and stay with. It turns out that friend, her father was a bishop of a ward. The friend was a cheerleader with me. And so her mom one day was just joking around and was like, man, I'm like, well, why doesn't Nikki come live with us? And she was like, oh, okay. And then she's like, wait, are you for real? And then she was like, yeah, are you for real? I'm like, yeah. And so it was like a joke between the mom and the daughter. And then it just ended up okay.
Like it happened. All right.
Yeah.
So we had 2 stipulations for me living with them. One was, if I wanted to get to school, I either had to figure out how to arrange the bus for myself, or I needed to go to early morning seminary, because that's how they got to school. And then the other one was, I didn't have to go to their church, but I had to go to a church.
Okay.
Now, at that time, I had a mad crush on a boy who was LDS. And so I was more than happy to go to their church, even though I didn't know anything about it.
Well, in fairness, crushes really motivate us in life.
Absolutely.
Right. Especially when you're in high school.
Oh yeah, that's everything in high school.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you like this boy.
Yeah, which never turned into anything at all. But I ended up moving in with them. I ended up going to church, going to seminary, and yeah, a lot of things changed for me at that point. But it was a very interesting way to grow up, considering I kind of bounced around a lot and didn't live with my mom very much. And so I think there was just a lot of difference, a lot of growth in that space in life. And then whenever I decided to join the church, my mom was not against it, but she definitely doesn't believe in the things that I believe in. And so she was not thrilled, but she would let me make my decisions, as she clearly had done before.
Yeah.
So
your connection to the LDS church, is this friend of yours and this cute boy that you liked.
Yep.
Where was your dad through all of this, Nikki?
Yeah.
I don't know my dad.
Oh,
okay.
I've never met him. He's not on my birth certificate. Don't know.
Yeah. How did, well, no, I won't go down that. Well, I was going to ask how that affected. So I'm just thinking about like everything you're telling me. It's a lot already. And you're, would you say like a junior
we
in
haven't
high
even gotten
school?
out of high school yet.
So
Well, I do have an earlier. Wow, there's my finger.
yeah,
We're still getting used to video. I do have one question before we kind of wrap up high school. If I can ask, what was the reason in fourth grade? Why couldn't you and your mom live together? Why did she go to a different state and you went to your grandparents?
Yeah, so my mom was married to somebody at the time who was very, very mean to me, and he was abusive. And I used to go and visit my grandparents during the summer. And while I was there, I would always have fun. And I loved being there. And then when I would come home, it was always terrible. And so I would call my grandma crying and telling her all these things. And then my mom would talk to my grandma, and my grandma would be like,
yeah,
and basically was like, well, she can come live with us, or, we're going to cause problems basically for you. And so my mom let me go live with them.
I gotcha.
yeah. So you're 17 in high school. I think any child is looking for stability. I think especially when you're in high school and those kind of your formative years, you're really probably seeking out stability. And at that point in your life, I think it's fair to say you had a lot of instability, being moved around from home to home, not knowing who your father was. It's a kind of an odd question, but how do you think that affected you specifically in high school? Just that context of the instability, not necessarily knowing the identity of your father, the moving around from home to home. I mean, surely that had to affect you somehow.
I think I spent a lot of time overcompensating and pretending and putting on a show.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I feel like my personality probably was developed a lot based off of the covering up the trauma that I was experiencing at home, and in various homes.
Yeah.
And so, I was always like a look at me person, and like I was always happy. And I mean, some of that stuff hasn't changed about me. I'm still kind of like that, but I think it was much more of a show as a child than it is
Sure,
now.
you're trying to survive, right? You're trying to cope. You're trying to survive. That's a tough time.
And there's trauma that I experienced. The reason that I left my grandparents' house is because of sexual abuse, and so that was during the end of my middle school years. And so going into I'm going into middle school and high school with these people that I'm just terrified are going to find out or know. I live in a small town. It's in the papers. Some of my close friends knew already, but obviously they love me anyway. But I was just so terrified that other people would find out and would know, because kids are not nice.
Sure,
kids are awful.
And so even though nothing that happened was ever my fault, it was I was a victim of that. That's not always how it's portrayed to kids, and so I was just always worried that people would find out. And so I just had to put on a big show all the time and cover up everything. And
a lot of masking.
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of fascinated by this. Now you have this proposition of church or religion.
Yeah.
Was that kind of hard to reconcile, even the thought of adopting that as part of your life, especially because of the abuse and trauma and instability, kind of, the hard things you've already gone through in life? Church, you mentioned the LDS church, but any Christian church obviously talks about, a loving God or Heavenly Father, Christ and things like that. How receptive were you of the idea of religion?
So I hadn't ever gone. My family was not really. I mean, everybody believed in God, right? Everybody believed in Jesus, but nobody went to church. There was no praying. There was no reading of scriptures. There's nothing like that. As I grew up, I often would visit other churches with my friends. If I stayed the night at somebody's house or whatever, I would always go to church with them. Or I always thought it was interesting to see like the different churches and stuff. So it wasn't a foreign concept, religion, really. It was something I always thought, but I felt like I kind of came up with my own ideas of who and what I believed and how I believed. And interestingly enough, like after I was charged with a reading assignment from missionaries and kind of went through some of that, and the more I learned, I asked so many questions, and I was really hungry and really eager, and I feel like it was exactly what I needed. It kind of filled the hole,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah. I think just in my limited experience of, I think trauma like that can either bring people closer to the idea of some spiritual being or some spiritual comfort, or
Yeah.
it can really put people off
Really
this
push them
idea,
away.
push them away. So it's kind of fascinating to me that you found something there. Even with the trauma that you had, I guess you didn't necessarily attach it to, God causing this for you, or, having trouble hearing that again, that there's a loving Heavenly Father that loves you dearly, and you actually accepting that and not being like, if he loves me so much, then why as a child have I had to go through this? So I think that's really interesting. Okay. So go ahead, Cody.
Before we get too far from this, I think one of the points you brought up thus far that I love, Nikki, and understand, I don't want to dump any salt in an open wound, but how important fathers are. I know as a child at some point you probably daydreamed and imagined a life with an active father in your life. Can you speak to that a little bit as far as what that would have done for you? Do you think if your dad would have been active in your life and present, would life have been any different for you? Would things have turned out differently?
I mean, it's hard to know, obviously. Like, I don't know him, and depending on who the father is, it could have been a better life. It could have been a worse life. I mean, who knows what that really holds. When I was a kid, I used to want to find him a lot. I tried to do research. I employed some of my friends' parents to help me do research. Like, I was really adamant about trying to figure it out. And even as an adult now, even still, there's moments where I'm like, maybe I can figure it out. Maybe I can, dig a little deeper. Maybe I can, find out who he is. I think the thing that is hard now, I mean, looking back at my life, right? Like, can see much clearer after the thing's over, right?
Hindsight's always 20/20, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you can see that clearly some of the issues that come up later in my life, as we I'm sure we'll go over today, are a direct, effect of like what is the trauma of not having a dad,
Mm-hmm.
and then being abused by the male role models that were in my life. I think, I'd like to think my life would have been better or different, but had I have not experienced those things, I also wouldn't be who I am. And I think, Jared, you're saying, talking about blaming God for, what has happened to me and the experience that I've had. Like, if he loved me, like, why would these things happen to me? And I think I never really had that thought. I always thought, like, man, like, enough is enough, if I could just catch a break here. Yeah. And sometimes I still feel that way. Like, man, every time something happens, I'm like, have I not like done enough here? Like,
right.
Let's wrap it up. Like, so I think, for me, I just really try to remember that, man, he has such a bigger scope, right? Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what his plan is for me. And maybe, he keeps putting me into this refiner's fire because he's just trying to polish me until I can, come out nice and shiny. So it's hard sometimes, but I don't think I ever had the feeling of blaming him for the trials.
Yeah.
It seems like that's kind of your strength, though, is you're able to look at these things and have a positive attitude and kind of walk by faith and understand that all these things will be for my experience and my good one day. I don't see it yet, but one day I will.
Right. Someday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I love that about you. I think, I think some of the happiest, funniest, most caring people are some of those that have kind of walked those rocky paths, and they don't want, man, I notice when I lean here, we lose me. They don't want other people to have to necessarily walk that path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if we're not careful, we will go down an avenue of talking theology, and
We will.
as members of the LDS faith, I am certainly fascinated by what Nikki's talking about, is accepting that God did not do these things to you, but he also did not prevent them, right?
Yeah.
And trying to figure out kind of what that means. And
Yeah.
anyway,
I'm sorry. So we need to move on with Nikki's life.
well, yeah. So she's 17.
She's
She's
17.
living with the bishop.
With the bishop.
her friend, her cheerleader friend. I wonder, were you able to get away with antics living with an LDS bishop in the house? I mean,
Were there a lot of pillow fights?
Could you sneak
That's
some-
what Jared wants to
no,
ask.
no. Could you sneak some cigarettes, or how
You know
fun was
what? It's really funny. So there was 4 kids, 1, 2, yeah, including me, 4. So there was me, there was my cheerleader friend who was a year older than me. And then there was their son who was about a year, I want to say a year or 2 younger than me. And then they had a much younger daughter. But, I call them like my parents, my brother and sister, but they would sneak out, they would go and do stuff, they would get into trouble, and I was always terrified. I felt very blessed to have been taken in by their family, and it's not like they could get rid of their kids, but they could get rid of me. And like,
She was a good girl. Look how sweet she
So
was.
super sweet.
I never went whenever they were sneaking out. So
What were they sneaking out to do?
never anything bad going.
We're not interviewing them. She can't throw them under the bus.
yeah.
here.
I'm just curious. Were they sneaking out to
yeah.
smooch? Were they smoking cigarettes? Were they drinking
No.
beer?
We'll get them on the show and we'll get their story.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Let's move on. Okay, so at some point you graduate high school.
Thought this
I
was an
do.
interview. My bad.
What'd you say?
I thought this was an interview. My bad.
This is going to be a 5-hour interview. We haven't even got past 17 years old.
I know. I
for
told you.
Nikki.
Listen, and then we're like skating over things, right? Like this is just like
This is part
we
one.
have
Maybe
a whole- I could
Nikki's
have a whole
season 1.
series
I think
of
a whole
podcasts.
season of Nikki, I think, sounds awesome.
Yes.
Okay, well,
So.
you tell me if we're skating over anything, Nikki,
No,
that
I
else
just
that you
mean,
want to talk
like,
about.
if we want to get through all the touch points, then yeah, we're gonna.
I
need
mean,
to
I
sit
could talk to you
down. There's still a little
forever.
skating.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
my kids might not let me talk forever though.
Well, high school happened. She was there, and then you got married. What age did you get married for the first time?
So if it weren't for this family that I lived with and the ward that I was a member of, about, let's see, I want to say like maybe a month after I moved in with them. It was not very long.
Wow.
Maybe even before my baptism, but about a month. And everybody was going in to welcome home. At that time you could go, to see people at the airport, and it wasn't like an ordeal. So anyways, they all were going in to welcome home a missionary.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I've been living here for 5 seconds and I'm not going to stay here by myself. So I guess I'll go. So I just drove in to Vegas with them, and, they were welcoming home this missionary. So for the first time I met my future husband was at this, welcome home. He and I didn't start dating then. It was a little while later, but I was a junior at that point, and he was coming home from a mission. So he was 4 years older than me.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really on either one of our radar at that point. But yeah, so I ended up meeting him. And so long story short, after I graduate high school, he and I were already dating at that point. And so we got married pretty quickly. I think I was 19 whenever we got married.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you have any pushback from people, or family loves, or not just family, everyone loves to tell you when you're too young to get married. So
Everybody loves to tell you everything.
They really do. Everybody has the best
That's
opinions
right.
on everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Was your family supportive, I guess, of that?
They were, but my mom has always been fine with letting me do whatever I want to do and kind of making my own mistakes, which I love and hate about her. You know, like on some level, like ground me, don't let me leave the house, don't let me do anything. But she
I
never
need
was
some
like,
boundaries. I'm asking for some boundaries.
yeah, she was never really like that. And I mean, sometimes, man, I think back, I'm like, she gave me such a long rope, and I really could have hung myself. It's a good thing I was a mildly decent child because it could have been a bad situation. But
Yeah.
yeah, so everybody was pretty supportive. I mean, obviously, everybody gives you that. Um, you know, like, oh, well, you're really young, like, make sure, or, you know, those kind of things. But we're also talking about a church where it's normal for people to get married
Yep.
fairly young.
That is a very common template. The missionary returns from their 2-year mission for the
Yes.
church, and their next mission in life is to find a
They're
spouse.
told, go find your eternal companion. Yep.
Find a companion and start having kids. So yeah,
This
in
is
the
where we
in the
plugged
L
last season again.
right, yep. Good callback, Cody.
Thank you.
In the LDS culture, that's super common. Get married kind of, you know, young and start a
Yeah.
family. So that sounds like that's what you did. So are you
Yeah.
still? I guess you're still in the Vegas area at when
Yeah.
you finally do get married.
Yep. So we got married. So after high school, I went into Vegas. My mom was working in healthcare. She got me a job with a doctor that she knew from a hospital. I worked in his office. So yeah, I immediately moved into Vegas, and he and I dated, and then we got married. We had 3 kids. I ended up staying home. He ended up going into the military. We were dating. He was in like the reserves.
Mm-hmm.
Or not, it wasn't reserves. What was it called? It's like he was a military police, but it was something else. I can't remember the term. Anyway, so he would go out like once a month, 2 weeks a year, things like that, like nothing crazy. But at one point we decided we kind of needed a change, just in our lives in general. And he went into active duty. And so when he did that, he got stationed in Korea for a year. And I had just had, let's see, it was like maybe 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks before he left for Korea. I had our 3rd kid.
Wow.
And so
What's the age range of your first 3 children? What's the gap between them?
A year apart between 13 months between the 2 oldest ones, and
Wow.
then almost 2 years between the second and the third.
Again, a very common LDS approach.
3
Yes.
kids, all under 3, mom by herself.
Yep. So
Yeah.
So
so that's what happened. He went to Korea for a year. We had to stay here, and that's where things got real rough. And you know, it just, a lot of things changed and a lot of mistakes were made. And, you know, so we ended up getting a divorce after he came back. Yeah. So that was a fairly, I feel like, traumatic situation in your
for
life.
sure.
I
That's
think
a big deal. That
you're doing all the things that you're supposed to do, right? Marry a returned missionary and get married in the temple. And, you know, you do all these things, and then it just falls apart. And you're like, that's not what was supposed to happen.
No, it wasn't in your playbook, right?
No,
you know, the day of your wedding, that's not even part of the equation.
No, the damn defense called an audible when we weren't looking.
Right. So when that stuff does happen, yeah, that's just another traumatic event. You know, you have, I'm sure you don't want your children to have to experience that, and that's really tough. And you know, not to keep talking about kind of the context of being LDS, but that certainly is not something LDS couples consider is going to happen. You know, you think that like Nikki alluded to, you've met this return missionary, and so you're pretty certain what the values are going to be.
Well, you've done everything right. You followed the template. You've followed the instructions.
Right.
You've done it right. So, yeah.
So the marriage falls apart.
Yeah.
What is your kind of your mentally emotional stage at that point? Obviously you're devastated.
I also fall apart. So this is where my initial pivot, the pivot in the wrong direction happens.
Yeah.
And so
that is a professional producer who's invoking the name of the season 2 as well.
That is.
Incredible. Just so
You're welcome.
talented.
No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry to interrupt you. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. So I definitely just ended up turning down a path where, I mean, I never did anything crazy. I never turned to drugs. I never got into, alcohol. I did drink. I did smoke. I did do things that are taboo or maybe, not something that
You did listen to Britney Spears in high school and
I
did
did.
perform a
I
talent
did.
show. Is that right?
Yeah, I never went full Britney, but
You
Yeah.
were more Bone Thugs and Harmony, weren't you?
No, she caught Britney at her peak.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a typical teenager. You
Well, I mean,
did some stuff, but
I wasn't
nothing
a
too
teenager
crazy.
anymore, right? Because I
Yeah,
got married
she's
when I was 19.
kid,
I
man.
have 3 kids.
Well,
and
I apologize. I thought when you were
24.
talking about like I've done some stuff in life, I just assumed it was your teenage years. But now you're talking about after the divorce.
Yeah,
you,
she was a good girl.
you experimented with stuff.
Yeah, I was a good kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean,
Okay, gotcha.
Anyway, so so basically,
You basically say the heck with it. Let me try.
I'm like
Let me
24.
experience some of these things that I
yeah,
decide. I kind of adhered not to experience.
yeah.
And why the heck not? Everything else is kind of falling apart, I guess, may have
Yeah,
been your
and I
thought
don't
process.
know that my initial reaction was that, but I think it was kind of a slow and steady. I stopped going to church because going to church with 3 kids is hard. Going to a family ward with 3 kids when you're single is hard.
Yeah.
And so it was really difficult. And so I just didn't want to do it. And so as you step away, or as I stepped away from maybe my relationship with the Lord, I started to make just decisions that, you wouldn't want your child to make, I guess. I got into relationships that were not good. I had pregnancies, I ended up, I eloped
Mhm.
after I found out that my ex was getting married, like less than 6 months after we got divorced.
Mm.
I met another return missionary, and he was a musician, and he was, dreamy, and so, listening to people sing and play guitar, and you're like, but yeah, that was all that was. But
That's how I landed my wife. Although
So you eloped in Vegas? What
So we
was
eloped.
there an Elvis impersonator?
I mean, not
great
right
question.
there, but there was definitely multiple on this trip that day.
But so no fancy
But he
wedding
didn't
by
care,
Elvis.
yes. No.
Okay.
But yeah, so we went
So
and
dumb.
eloped, and then I kind of came to, right? Like, whoa, this was a crazy thing to do. Like, we don't live together. He was from North Carolina. I was in Nevada. He came to Nevada, but I mean, he didn't like live there. And after my divorce, I was staying with my mom, and so I didn't have my own house, and he didn't live in the state, and so we never really lived together. But after about 3 months, we were like, this was a terrible, I don't know what we were thinking. This is a bad idea. And so we got an annulment. And then fast forward, we're at the end of the year, and I find out that I'm pregnant. And then I find out that it's twins.
Oh.
Why not?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So that happened. And then, there was multiple situations like that throughout the dark days. I like to refer to them as. And I ended up in another relationship after that one, and that one was an abusive relationship where it was more emotional abuse. I just really didn't have much worth at that point, and I think that was definitely taken advantage of. But I ended up pregnant again.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I have all these children now, and the dads are not involved, and I just get to love them. So I mean, I could be grateful on some level, but I think it's definitely interesting to look back and be like, wow, that was a ridiculous mistake. And that was a ridiculous mistake. And that was but if I didn't do those things, I wouldn't
Right.
have the children that I have. And so,
Yeah. Do you do that? Do you go back and kind of analyze, I guess, your behavior or your thought processes, or,
yeah,
you know, why those things happened? I mean, do you think that you obviously we're trying to find ways to cope with trauma,
yeah,
and you kept looking for stability in a male figure, and
yeah,
you probably were way open to those opportunities. And
yeah,
isn't that interesting, just how you know, I'm interested in the psychology of things,
No,
and certainly your upbringing that you kind of shared as a child into your teenage years must have influenced, you know,
sure.
that period where you decided to be like, all right, I've lived within, I've had stability. I've lived within certain boundaries of, you know, some guidelines and principles of my religion, and this is where it's got me. So maybe I'll try the other way. And you know, I I guess my question is, have you kind of gone back and reflected on that time? And you mentioned this was a pivot in your life, and we want to talk about kind of the positive and negative consequences, I guess, of pivoting. And it's a very surface level question,
Yeah.
but when you compare it, and by the way, all your children are awesome. They're beautiful. They're beautiful
she
people.
has
They're
an
very
amazing
talented. They're
family.
amazing. As you compare your life now, which you have some stability, and we'll talk about um, your husband now, and where you are now. You know, what are the big, I guess, the stark contrast of living that life and living your life now? Is that too weird of a question or too simple? Cody,
Why
Cobry,
ask it? No, I think it's
you're
I
my
was
great.
like waiting
advisor.
for Cody to respond. Could you
No,
look at it? I'm like,
I had my own scenic route question I wanted to get to. So let me ask mine real quick, and then you
sure.
can decide which one you want to answer.
Perfect.
So in today's world, like pregnancy is very much an option.
Yeah.
It's when you had these surprise pregnancies, did it ever cross your mind that maybe I don't need to be having kids? You know, what made you ultimately decide to keep this child you were going to birth and raise it, even though you knew that there's a good chance you're going to be doing it on your own?
Man, you went
Yeah.
way deeper and
I said,
of a personal question.
I said
That
it was a scenic rabbit hole,
willing
and then
to.
she could choose which one she wanted to answer.
Okay,
Nikki, tell him to back off
it's a
me.
real Sophie's choice here. Go ahead.
It is a
Please be nice.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so hopefully maybe I can answer both questions. I think the stark difference between maybe my life before the bad pivot and before the good pivot and after the good pivot. Yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, I think the difference is that I just felt very alone, and I just wanted some help and some love. And I just really looked for that at the closest, easiest way to get it,
Yeah.
you know? And looking back, right? Oh man, like these mistakes, these things that have happened in my life, like I can't, the pain that my children have had to experience because of divorce, because of the separation, some of them separating from me, you know, or their dad, or whatever that looks like. It's been probably the most painful. And I mean, you can see there's been a lot of pain and trauma in my life, but that has been the most painful experience, is having to see any pain that my children have had to experience.
Yeah.
It's never been really on my radar. I think even when I got pregnant with the twins, and there was some stuff that I experienced while I was pregnant with them. So I had something called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, which means that basically there was one placenta that was feeding both twins, and one twin was getting a whole lot and the other twin wasn't getting enough. And there's like this like crazy surgery that I had to run to, like there's only like 5 places in the country that do it. Like it was just like a very traumatic pregnancy. And so throughout that, they were like, well, this, your kids are going to have all these problems. And I went to California where they're very, very pro choice there. And so there was a lot of conversation about whether or not to keep them or to not. And I would say it was terrifying. Like there were times where I was like, maybe, like, I mean, what are we doing? I don't know. Like, is this a good thing? Am I just going to bring in, something into the world that is not really going to be able to experience, life? And at this time I wasn't really active and stuff, but I never lost a testimony. I always knew that it was true. I just was failing to live up to it, And so no, I would say it wasn't really on my radar to make the pro choice, but my choice was to have my babies. And I mean, I'm grateful that I have done that. And I think no matter all of the stuff that's come from it, right? Like they were worth it. And it was hard, and it's still hard, but they're worth it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so at some point,
See, that was a good question.
did she answer mine or yours?
Well, she finished with mine.
She did both, I think.
She did both, but she finished with mine. Look, she made me smile.
Awesome.
I got the feel goods. She's such a good mom, just talking about everything. Like, that's awesome. And I commend you for that. Like, that's something we can't speak to, obviously.
No.
But I think that we can at least empathize and understand the sacrifices that others may need to go through, and can look on and say, I respect you and commend you for your hard work.
We can respect it. We can celebrate it. I'm kind of in awe of it.
Yeah.
Anybody who chooses to, do the lovely things or allow lovely things to come out of hard times and hard situations, I think is really incredible and beautiful. So at some point, obviously, because we know where you are now, at some point there was another pivot, maybe back to the positive. And I love that you mentioned you kind of never lost, I guess, your belief system or faith or testimony that there was, a savior for you. There was a heavenly father for you. Those things, they never moved, right? Like you may have moved a little bit, but they never moved. And so what moved you back closer to them? I guess I'm alluding that there was a pivot back to your faith and the church. And
well, we see her there every week. So.
Yeah, that happened at some point.
How'd you come back?
But why did you make that transition? And what gave you the motivation, I guess, to make another change, a big change?
Yeah. So after technically my second divorce, but it was really my third because there was an annulment in there.
Right.
So that's where
with another return missionary. So you're over 2 on return missionaries.
Yeah. So then I ended up marrying somebody that was not a member. And we were married for about 4 years. Yeah. So this is like another story, right? And another, I had, one of my, well, not my youngest son, but I had another child. And ultimately, as I started moving towards feeling like I needed to go back to church, feeling like I needed to start building that relationship again. And there were a few things that happened. And I feel like this was the only marriage that was like maybe ended not because of major trauma, but just because it just didn't work out, Mm-hmm. I mean, we have still a wonderful relationship now. He's a great man. But after he and I got divorced and I was on my own again at this point, I was working probably maybe 70 hours a week or more. I would go to work at like 4:00 in the morning. I wouldn't get home until like 7:00 at night. And I'm raising these kids, and I had to hire a live-in nanny as a single mom because I was never home.
How many kids are you raising at this point as a single mom, Nikki?
So I had 4. I had the twins, and twins have autism, right? So they're a whole nother level of parenting. And then I had my 2 younger ones at that point. So I had 4 all the time. And then my older 3 would be with me summers and school vacations and things like that.
So is that a total of 7?
Yeah.
At this
So that would
point,
have
yeah.
been 7.
7 kids, 1 mom, working full time. Do you want to give her a trophy now?
I'd like one.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
If you guys could
That's-
get me one, that'd be great.
We will work on that.
Yeah.
Do we have budget for that, Nikki?
Yeah. Can you
You take it
order
out of my
yourself a
salary.
trophy, please?
We'll
Yeah.
take it out of her salary.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was we, the kids and I, at one point, one of the twins got incredibly sick, and they're nonverbal at this time. Neither one of them really spoke very much. And he couldn't really tell me what was wrong, but he was not breathing well. And I just didn't know what to do. And so I always moved my records wherever I went, even though I didn't attend church. I don't know why, I just always did. And so I was able to get a hold of missionaries, and I was just like, I need somebody to come give my son a blessing. Like, someone's got to do it. And so someone came and they gave him a blessing, and 2 days later he was back to normal. And I mean, he was really sick, and I was pretty terrified. So, and I mean, I have 7 kids at this point, so sicknesses don't really scare me, right? Like, I've seen them all. And so
Yeah.
And my mom's a nurse, so like it was pretty bad. So I think that was a little nudge. And then another one, I had just, the twins were a lot. Whenever they were younger, they were a lot. Like, they would mural walls in my rented house, and they would pee in carpet, and like, they were just crazy. And I would just like be like bawling in my room over, just the chaos that when my life was, and the decisions and the things that had come to pass from decision, things that I've done to myself, like this isn't victim like status. Like, I made choices and it really messed me up.
Yeah.
So, I was pretty devastated. And I remember praying and just thinking about, things, and I ended up going to the scriptures and reading a verse that, man, we've all heard 3 billion times, but come unto me and I will give you rest. Okay. And in my mind, it was so hard to go back to church. It was so hard to show up after everything I did with all of these kids, with no husband. How was I going to do that? But
what were your concerns with showing back up?
Man, where was Nikki in our last season?
I know.
This would have been perfect for the church culture
I
discussion.
know. We needed her.
How were you received, Nikki? I mean, that is an honest thing to be concerned about. Is I'm going to show up at this church, not really know anybody, and I'm gonna lug these kids in there with me as a single mom, and I'm going to have to talk about, because people are going to be interested in me about my life, I'm going to have to talk about it. So did you have some anxiety about that, and how did you deal with that?
I have totally had anxiety about it. That's why I didn't want to do it. That's why, I was just, how do I keep my kids quiet for an hour in sacrament? How do I keep, all those questions? Oh, your kids have multiple last names. Yes, they do. Like, let's talk about that. It's like, it was, but you know what? It was all me. It was all me, because when I got to church, I got nothing but love.
Good.
They loved me. They accepted me. They wanted to help me. They wanted to serve me. And I was so grateful. But that was the promise that I read, right? Come unto me and I will give you rest. And so I found rest. I found the rest that I needed. It might not have always been the most easy thing, but I always had the support and the love that I needed whenever I was there. And so, it was a process, obviously, to come back and to be completely active and lug the kids in every week and to, do all of that. But I mean, totally worth it. Totally worth it.
I think what's really beautiful, there really is some symmetry in your life. When we talked about your life as a teenager and some of the instability there and some of the issues you were dealing with, the traumatic events, and how religion or faith or spirituality, you were drawn to that. And then the same thing happens to you later on in life, right? You have more instability, kind of more chaos in your life, probably more fear and anxiety. And once again, you're kind of drawn to your faith. I think that's really cool. I don't have a question. I'm just pointing that out.
Well, if we're allowed to point things out,
this is half your show. Well, 1/3 of your show.
1/3 now.
So
no, we'll brag on Nikki. I think the thing that impresses me the most about you and telling your story is there's never any victim status claimed. I think it's so easy for people, especially who've been through some of the things you have, to say, well, this is the hand I was dealt, and I'm not gonna, God doesn't exist, because if God existed, this and this wouldn't happen, and da 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 da. But instead, by your own admission, hey, I made these choices. I made my bed. I'm going to sleep in it now. And I think that, in my mind, that
rare
is
right
part of
now.
it's rare right now, but that's part of your success.
Yeah.
Is instead of pointing your finger and looking for help on the sidelines, you pulled up your big girl pants and you said, you know what? I'm ready to make a change.
Yeah.
And that's when you were able to kind of start to feel that peace and that comfort. At least I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. That's how I'm interpreting your story.
Yeah, it's incredible. The resiliency there. And as we look to what seems to be kind of, I don't want to get too much of a tangent, but it's very common right now for society to victim blame.
Well, it's trendy to be a victim nowadays.
And Nikki it's rare in her story, and her resilience is actually rare that she pivoted under her kind of her own influence and energy, and deciding that, like you mentioned, Cody, is there's been some things in my life that resulted in choices that I made.
Yeah.
But she also recognized that she had the power and the strength to make other choices and go the other way. And
I made these bad choices, but guess what? I can make good choices too.
Yeah, it's awesome. So at this point, Nikki, you're still in Nevada, right? Nevada, excuse me.
We'll get him fixed.
Yeah.
By the way, it is possible that your father is Frank Sinatra. Now, hear me out.
Mine?
Hers.
Yes.
Yours, I think we know who your father is.
Oh, yeah. No, I was like, what do you mean you met my dad?
Oh, well, he got around.
Andy Williams.
I don't know who that is.
Do you know who Andy Williams is, Nikki?
No, she doesn't, because
Yes,
nobody
she
knows
does.
who Andy Williams
Shut
is.
up. Do you?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
I'll Google him.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
Moon River.
So you're in Nevada. You're taking your kids to church, and I'm excited to hear about the Davey story, because I'm a big Davey fan.
Davy's so
He's like the coolest guy, the
He is.
sweetest guy. So can we pry into that part of your life too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, pretty quickly, I went back to church probably 2018, and he and I met the beginning of 2019. So we started dating in February of 2019. And we actually ended up meeting on Mutual. Do you know what that is?
Yeah. The
Not
app.
like Church Mutual. The
Yeah,
app.
yeah.
Yes.
It's like the Mormon Tinder, right?
Yeah. And so I was probably on there for about 2 weeks. Not everybody is as stand up as you might imagine on that app.
I'm shocked.
And
Really?
Yeah.
it's pretty inappropriate. But so I was on there for probably about 2 weeks, and I was like, man, shopping for a human is freaking weird. And I was done with it. But at that point, he and I had already exchanged information. And so, the rest is history. He met me. I knew after like a week. He says it took him a lot longer than that, but.
Where was your first date with Davey?
So it was actually just at his apartment, because
Did he make you a meal?
He brought me food.
Okay. He's already a provider on the first date.
Yeah. Yeah. He was quite the blessing, actually. At this point I was I'm single, got all these kids and
How did that
yeah.
how did that conversation come up? At some
How do
point
you-
that's going to come up where I probably need to let this guy know I have 7 children
Yeah. And he
One
has
for
0.
every day of the week.
He
from
had 0
from
kids.
different marriages, different partners.
Right. That's the other thing, right? It's not like I was married for a long time and had 7 kids. I have multiple baby daddies.
Sure. So is that a first date discussion or
It was something we had talked about. We talked for 2 weeks before we actually
on the
ended up
app?
meeting and hanging out. So yeah, he already knew that. But I mean, y'all, I'm real charming.
Well, of course.
So he was already
100%.
hooked by the time he heard 7. He kept saying, "Man, there's no red flags," and I'm like, 7 children by multiple dads is not red flag. That is a red flag, sir. You are crazy. But I'm glad he was crazy. It's all working out. So
Yeah.
And how long have you and Davey been married now?
we got married during COVID, so 2020. So yeah, but we're just going on 5th year.
This would be a great segue to your COVID conspiracy podcast. Do you want to talk about that, Cody?
No, it's not fun anymore.
It's just sad. It's just all sad.
Like the more you dig in, the more you find out that's real. It's like, I don't want to play this game anymore. So, and you had Cash.
Yes.
Because of Davey, and Cash
The cutest
is
kid ever.
one of my top favorite nursery kids ever, only because he comes up to find me on occasion to say hi. It's rare, but every now and again.
And most
He's
children
a
are
gem.
just deathly scared of you.
Yeah.
That's fair to say.
Yeah.
Cody.
Most people are also definitely scared of Cash, so maybe that's
No way.
he's
That
always
kid's
trying
cute.
to carry the other children, like
Bury them?
carry them.
Oh, I just said bury
Bury him.
That's
He's in there at the nursery with a shovel.
I think that's cute too.
Yeah, that is.
So
Come lay in
cute.
this hole real quick.
I have too many
Yeah.
siblings. Let me bury one or two.
Yes.
Well, that's awesome. So you met in Nevada, and then you're obviously you're down here in God's country, Texas.
Yeah.
So what brought you guys down?
Yeah, so he's been in direct sales for a long time. So he was in solar, and my alarm is going off to tell me it's time for kids ready for bed. So he worked for solar companies, doing direct sales, and now he started fiber in Las Vegas, and we decided that we could open our own company and go to work underneath like companies like AT&T and things like that, and just be a dealer for them. And so that's what we started doing. And AT&T is based out of Texas, and so we just saw it. We didn't have to move. He travels for work, but we saw it as an opportunity to kind of change things up. Neither one of us loved Las Vegas, so we were happy to get out of there. And yeah, Texas is beautiful. It's always been a goal. Get down here, and here we are. Yeah.
So you have this beautiful home. You're down here in Texas. You found your soulmate in Davey. Did you think, at the hardest times of the hardest times, Nikki, did you think that this was possible? Like, did you have a vision that you could have this, during those really, really difficult times in your life?
I think I always hoped for it. But I don't know that I ever, especially whenever you have failed relationship, you start to look at it and, maybe I'm just not good at picking this, or maybe I'm just not good at this. Like maybe I just, maybe that's why I had so many relationships. So I could have these kids and, and just do my own thing and, and whatever. And that was the plan, right? Just to bring these kids to here and to be able to raise them and give them, a good home. So there was a lot of times where I just thought, man, I wish, but I never really knew if it was in the cards or not.
Yeah. Did you have something, Cody? Sorry.
Well, I know this is our maiden voyage. She did say alarm to get kids to bed. I want to be respectful of her time.
Yeah.
Should we give her like 2 minutes to just, do you have a message to give to the world after everything you've been through? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Where are you at
that's
right now?
that's exactly where I was at. I was
Okay,
gonna
perfect. Good.
ask Nikki, what would you say to people who maybe feel like they don't deserve to have the positive change, like
Ooh, I like that.
they maybe have found themselves in a difficult situation. Maybe it's things that they brought on to themselves, and maybe they don't feel like they do deserve what you have now, kind of a stability, a happy place, happy family, a spouse. What would you say to those people who question if they even deserve that? And then I guess I have two questions. Is that okay?
Ask her, not me. I'm fine.
Yeah, the podcast is called Pivotal. Was there, and I know there was many pivotal points in your life, but was there one, I guess, big pivotal moment where you decided to change? And what was that? And if there wasn't, what, I guess, gave you the resolve, or how are you able to dig deep enough to move forward with change? I mean, why did you ultimately take the other path?
Yeah.
That was a real long question.
I'll give you the
Can't
Jared
remember the first question, that was
interpretation. There's two paths we can take, right? We'll call it the right and the left. You chose the right. Why?
Well, my first question,
Oh
to
my-
go back.
You asked like 8 questions in a row.
Okay.
I'm very inquisitive. What do you tell people who feel like they don't deserve change?
Okay, that's a good one.
And
Yes.
then why did you take the right instead of the left? Fine, we'll do it your way.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple things I would tell people that think that change for them isn't possible, or maybe that they don't deserve it. The first thing would be forgiving the people who have hurt you, who have done wrong to you. Those issues are their issues, and you were a victim of them, but it doesn't define who you are, and you can't let it. So that's the first thing I would say, is forgive them and be able to let go of that, because that's going to be the first step to your healing. And then second would be that don't let the victimization, the thought that like you are a victim and you're forever going to be that, like you're not, and you can't let it be that. I've heard so many stories of people who have very similar cards dealt to them in life, and man, they're down much different paths than I have been in my life. And I think that it all starts with not harboring that anger, that resentment, that hurt. Just let it go. You have to learn to forgive, and if you can't do it on your own, then seek the help to be able to do it. So that would be the first thing. And then the most pivotal. What are you guys smiling? You're so weird.
It's great. You're doing wonderful.
Creeping me out. All right.
We're smiling because we're happy. Sorry, we'll frown at you.
I'm laughing. I'm still smiling that I took 3 paragraphs to ask you a simple question. It's just typical me. I'm trying to work on it.
You
but
do that.
I do that.
You really like.
I know.
Okay.
But we love him anyways. He's perfect.
Yeah, totally.
I'll get
part of his charm.
I'll get there eventually.
He will.
And then I would say, maybe my answer might be very similar to Jared's question, Cody. It's like I think I decided a long time ago, maybe before any of my crazy ins and outs and extra children and all of that stuff, like before all of that stuff happened, I think I decided a long time ago not to let my circumstances define who I am. People make mistakes, man, they just do. It's okay. Like, it's okay. There's ways out. There's always a way out. And I think being able to decide that you want more for your life than to be defined by the worst thing you ever did, man, like that is the goal. That doesn't define you. You can be more, and you are more. And I think that once you find that worth in yourself, that's going to be the change that you need.
I love it. I think we can.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to add anything.
No, we're gonna wrap up. Nikki, thank you. Nikki Ticky Tavi. She laughed. You cringed. Where the last question is, where do you fall on the nickname?
I don't know how I feel, but I don't
Okay,
know how I
perfect.
feel about Jared's tricky Nikki either. So
Me neither.
Well, I'm gonna keep calling you that until it gets weird. So thank
eventually
you.
it's gonna stick because nobody else is calling me anything else.
That's right.
It's already weird, so
We'll
we
go
hit
with
that
it.
mark.
Yep.
Well, yeah, Nikki, thank you for letting us chat with you,
Pry.
letting us go over your alarm to get the kids to bed, and then just talk about your story. I mean, it's incredible. We think you're incredible. I know people will find a lot of good from this who see it and listen to it. So we just thank you.
A lot of common ground with a lot of folks. Thanks so much, Nikki.
Yeah, you're welcome, guys.
And don't quit on us just yet.
Yeah.
This was just our first one. Okay, we'll get better.
Just wait. As soon as you edit and start putting stuff out, don't worry, I'm gonna be on top of it.
It's gonna be awesome.
That's right.
All right.
All right, guys.
We love you. We appreciate you. Have a good night.
Love you guys too. Bye.
See ya.
Okay.
Cody,
So this is the part of the podcast now.
could we ask for a better
dude?
guest?
I'm going to just put this out here that before we sat down and started, I gotta figure out this mic when I
We're
look
still
at
on
you.
a podcast show. Well, so for those of you who are maybe watching this on the old YouTubes, you've probably noticed that we've been angling our faces this way and not at the camera because
I try sometimes.
we were talking to Nikki up on the monitor. We'll have to get better at that. But
For me personally, there's a
look at me in the eyes.
I don't want to use the word anxiety because it is so overused nowadays.
Yeah.
But for me, there was a lot of anxiousness to sit down and do this, and almost the confidence to ask the questions I want to ask. Are they good questions? Is it going to move along? Is it going to help us? And luckily for us, when you have someone as talented as Nikki on, a good quarterback can make any receiver look good, right?
Well, certainly. Yeah, you really are prying into the personal lives of these people, and so I think we just want to be respectful of that. But she was very gracious. She's a perfect example of what we find fascinating, just the resilience of people. Why did they decide to make those adjustments? Where did that come from? And to be able to share their story and help other people out, I think is incredible.
We use the word fascinating. I'm fascinated by them. I'm impressed by them. I stand in awe of them. Anybody, I put people like Nikki almost up there with, cancer survivors or people that have sustained serious injury in their life and had to relearn to walk again. Yes, it wasn't a physical ailment she was dealing with, but she definitely had to make some tough changes, had to be disciplined, and again, had the accountability to look at her life and say, I got myself here. I can get myself back out of it. But I also recognize that the only way I'm going to get back out of it is if I reach out to a higher power. I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
And going back, I think that stood out to me so much because in my life, that's the point I had to reach, where it wasn't, I recognized it didn't matter what had happened to me. I was the one making the choices. I was the one driving the car down the road. And the only way I was going to get the car down the road I wanted to be was if I started driving the right way.
Yeah.
And so I commend Nikki for that, and think that, anybody that can take ownership of their problems and have the humility and the honesty to embrace it, good things will come to those people.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I was talking a lot. So that's good.
No, you're good.
I was going to say, save me.
Yeah, and we need to wrap it up. Obviously, we've gone long, but it's so
pee like a racehorse.
Yeah, it's so hard to condense someone's life story.
Well, yeah. I mean, we glossed over how much of it?
Probably a lot.
We could have done hours.
We'll have to do another episode behind a paywall. If you
Yes,
if you want
yes.
the rest of the story, whatever.
That parents are forbidden from ever accessing.
So what was cool about Nikki's story is, like you talked about, Cody, she was drawn to a higher power, and she put a lot of her faith and confidence in that. I'm really excited to talk to other people this season who may not, have any spiritual connection or
Well, I think we
believe
have
in
some guests that
type
are
of
not
a deity, and
LDS
so it'll be
coming on.
really cool to talk to them and figure out, what was your motivation, what helped you, and that's what this is all about. So it was a pleasure to sit next to you on our inaugural season 2, episode 1.
This is a blast. I'm so glad. So
episode.
glad we are back at it.
And will you commit to America and to me right now that you'll do an episode 2 with me one day?
I, the Cobra, solemnly swear to record at least 5 more episodes with you. I'm not going to commit to 1. I'm going to commit to 5.
Well, we'll sign the contract. And who was the Missouri guy that you are going to make people Google? Andrew Williams?
Andy Williams?
Yeah.
I'm really surprised. He was like a huge pop singer back in the day.
Clearly. Super huge.
Kind of like a Sinatra. Shut your mouth. He's dead now. He died in Branson, Missouri.
R.I.P.
Actually, I don't know if he died there, but he performed there.
Well, let's end the show and go look us
Go
Andy Williams'
Andy.
greatest hits.
Yeah, look up Moon River. You'll love it.
Okay. All right. Fare thee well. No, we can't end with fare thee well.
Fare thee well.
What a stupid thing to say. Cody Cobra, we'll see you next time.
Jer Bear. Until next time.
Okay, bye.
What was our old sign off?
I don't
All is
know.
well.
We don't have one.
Oh.